up. So my name is Corey Baker. I own Kokanee Crew Outfitters. I live in Heber City, Utah, and I guide on Strawberry, Deer Creek, Jordanelle, Rockport, East Canyon, and then we just added a permit on Fish Lake. So that's going to be a fun reservoir that we're going to go fish this year. We're not going to spend a lot of time down there, but I would love to spend some time down there. It's beautiful, but we're going to definitely put some time down there and some work and figure that reservoir out. Some of you may have known my business to be Kokanee Kid Outdoors. We have changed that name now due to a rebranding that we're going through. It's not just me guiding anymore. As you can see, I have a couple boats. I have a couple guides. I have 3 guides, and fishing multiple reservoirs, and also adding some new fishing adventures this year and next year. We found it ideal to name us a crew instead of just me. I feel like that's a better name for our company, Kokanee Crew Outfitters. So if you've known us as the other name, know that we've switched over here. Nothing's changed. We're still doing the same stuff. And hopefully you guys will support that. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So today we're going to be talking a little bit more about the equipment that's on the boats, and then we'll talk a little bit about the tactics. Mark covered a lot of that. I'll open that up as we go through each tactic. If there's something that maybe you want to ask me or you didn't ask, we can address that then. And then if some of you are uncomfortable with asking the question in this setting, because some of us don't like to get up and ask those questions. After the seminar, myself or Mark or Taylor, even Nicole and my wife Krista's back here in the back corner. Yeah, she can even answer some questions if you guys want to ask those questions after the seminar, just if you're a little more comfortable doing that. So how many of you in here do not have downriggers? You don't have downriggers? Really? All right. Okay. So that's good, because we're going to be addressing everything. Everybody has downriggers and those that don't. Who in here have manual downriggers? Quite a few of you. And the rest of you obviously have electric. So we're just going to talk real quick about manual downriggers, the pros and the cons, and that's if I can read it. It's a little bit blurry, but manual downriggers, of course, we have Scotties and we have Cannons, and there's a couple other manufacturers. These are probably the top 2 manufacturers out there that you guys are going to be purchasing. Some of the pros of the manual downriggers, of course, are they're inexpensive. They're usually fairly affordable. They're easier to install just because you don't have any power. They're a simple operation. They just have a brake right here with this hand release. You let the cable go down the ball, and then you tighten it up and it stops it. And they're perfect for the occasional weekend angler. So if you guys are out just fishing every once in a while, you're not out as much as me, or 2 to 3 times a week, 3 to 4 times a week, these are probably perfect for you, unless you're fishing Strawberry and you're catching 50 to 60 cutthroats, because that's where the cons come in. The cons for that is the manual cranking can wear you out. It's hard on your shoulder, especially as we get older, and we all feel that pain, right? And they do not come with swivel bases. So swivel bases are really nice to have, as you can see on this Lumicraft trophy right here. That has a swivel base on it, so you can move that downrigger to the side of your boat and get it out of the way. So if you need to pick up and go, if it doesn't have a swivel base, sometimes you need to undo it and take it off your boat, which can be a little bit of a problem if you're in a hurry to go somewhere. And then if you fish with downriggers a lot, I would not recommend the manuals. Electric downriggers, and we're going to be covering, I use the Optimum, so we're going to be covering that quite a bit. I'm going to tell you why I feel like the Optimums are a tool that I really like to use that helps put more fish in the boat. So the pros are the electric motor for the up and down, has an automatic ball stop at the water surface, more features like auto up and down, the cycle mode, and then bottom tracking, and preset depth targets. And then we also allows you to network your downriggers, and we're going to talk about that. That's what we're going to hit on right after this. and then positive ions. And trust me, I'm not an electronic genius, but I do know the basics of it, enough to get me, give me enough information to use these pieces of equipment successfully. So there's a lot of guys out there that know a lot more about electronics than I do. Probably Tristan knows. Tristan's he's an excellent walleye fisherman that's here with us today, and he probably knows his electronics a lot better than I do. And then swivel bases. So most of the Optimums, the Mag 10s, all come with swivel bases. The Mag 5s don't. I think all the Scotties, as you can see a Scotty here, come with a swivel base. So if you want an inexpensive downrigger that's going to work really well, the Scotties, that's an affordable downrigger that has a swivel base. That's a great unit to use. And then, like I said, a Canon has a great one as well, but I do really love this Optimum. And then the cons are they're expensive, connects to your battery and uses battery capacity, and you might need another battery. And then there's a learning curve for the models like the Optimum. So let's go next slide. So now we're going to talk about accessories for downriggers. Of course, these are things that you're going to need with your downriggers are weights. I prefer a weight that's 6 to 10 pounds when we're fishing for kokanee, just to eliminate some of that blowback. So that downrigger ball isn't pushing out forward as you're going forward, or pushing back as you're going forward. It keeps it more vertical in the water while you're fishing, so make sure your preset, your lengths that you're fishing back, your setbacks are correct every time, are the same. And then next slide. And then line release clips. So has anybody here used the Scotty clips? They're good, right? Work great. Anybody here use the Seps or the Vance clips? I love the Seps and the Vance clips. And then is anybody using the Chamberlain release? There's a few of you that are using those. And I'm going to guess that there's nobody in here using the Canon releases. You are?
No, we're not.
No, you're not. Is there anybody in here using the Canon releases? They're difficult, aren't they? They are. They're really great though if your button blows out on your shorts, and you can tighten them up there to hold your shorts together for the rest of the day. That's the only thing I've found that they're great for. But if you know how to use them and you've got comfortable with them, I challenge you to try any of those 3 clips right there, and I think you'll fall in love with them. They release really well. Especially this one here, the Seps. You can put that in back farther into the jaws of it, or you can put it up close, and you can kind of give it a early release or a little later release depending on the size of fish that's going to hit that. And then this Chamberlain release is really cool. I believe that's a magnetic tensioner in here that actually you can set horizontally and vertically. So you can tighten your line down and crank that pull down, maybe 2 pounds, 3 pounds, and anything that's a little tighter than that will pull it out. And then the same thing with the horizontal is if a half a pound or 1 pound fish, you can set it to that to where those smaller fish pull it out. And it's important to know, like when these fish pull the line out of the clips, you want that to tighten up as fast as you can. So that's why line releases are super important. If you're having to jerk that line out of there every time, and then crank down as fast as you can and get that tension on that fish, there's a really good chance you're going to lose that fish. So try to get a release that will release it quickly so that you can get tension on that fish.
On that top right one, I've noticed the more you use it throughout the day, you'll get to a point where it doesn't want to keep the line held in it, so you end up switching it out. Do you have any idea of reason why? You can still use it the next time you go out one now, but the more you use it that day, eventually the line doesn't want to stay in when you start reeling your pull over. Sometimes it'll pull the line out of it.
Okay, is it a Vance or a Seps?
Look at that one right there.
It looks like that one. So I think Marine Products has some Seps clips here. Buy a couple of those and try them, because there are some manufacturers out there that make some cheaper ones that do exactly what you're talking about.
Use them the next time, and they'll be good through several hours and whatnot, and then eventually get to the point that they don't want to keep the line held in there.
Okay.
Before you get down to where you want to stop reeling, when you bend your pole over, they'll pop.
Oh, okay. I don't have that problem with the seps.
Started during the day.
Yeah.
Beginning for the first several hours, you don't have that.
Okay. I've bought some off eBay before that were, that's just cheap ones, and I've had that problem where they've released it, or they don't crimp it tight enough and you can't even crank your pole down.
Yeah, you've used them for several hours.
Okay. I put 4 seps clips on for the year, and if I go through 2 sets on each downrigger for the year, that's really rare. I usually go through 1 on each downrigger, unless I don't leave it clipped to the line when I'm traveling and, it snaps off if I'm going 60, 75 miles.
You go out and you use the same ones again, it'll be good for several hours, then they'll start releasing.
Okay, good to know. Okay, and then let's go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
On that seps, there's a spring in it, and you can adjust the tension in the handle.
Yes.
You can see it up there.
Yeah, there. Oops.
Actually adjust how tight it is.
Yeah, there's a little spring right here, and you can either adjust it forward or back to set that tension in there. So pay attention to that spring. If it is sliding around in there and it's loose, you're probably gonna get a lot of early releases on that. And let's go to the next slide. And then cable retrievers. How many of you do not have these on your downriggers? Like, be honest, guys. If you do not have these on your downriggers, I suggest you get them. And there's 2 reasons that are important for me to have these on the downriggers, and they're not on these ones right here, just because they've got these set up. But your cable, it literally just goes through this little slider here. This is a Scotty's, that's a Canon. The Scotty, you have to cut your line to put on. The Canon, you can undo the screws and you can slide it on over your cable, so you don't have to cut that line. But to bring that downrigger ball in from the side of your boat, that's what that's for. That hooks onto the line right there, and then you pull it back and you lock it into that cleat. And it saves your hands. Like, you do not want to be pulling that cable back and forth all day, cutting your hand. And then the safety aspect of it, I don't want to see, and neither does any of your family members want to see you reaching over the side of the boat trying to grab that cable when it's out there 4 to 6 feet and accidentally falling in the water. The water's cold this time of year. Like, let's be safe out there. Buy these. They're like 15 to 20 bucks. Put them on your downriggers and use them. I think you guys will really like them. I won't fish without them. If I have a downrigger that breaks and I don't have that cable retriever, I'm fishing 3 downriggers that day. It's just too big of a pain in the rear end to grab that cable all the time. And then with that, stacking. How many of you guys just have 2 downriggers? Or 1? How many have 4? Okay, a lot of you guys have 4. If you only have 1 or 2 downriggers, you can use these shuttle hawks. Anybody ever use these shuttle hawks? Okay, they're great. Like, you hook this on your cable right here like this. You hook your line on there, and you literally tighten up your pole like this with your reel, and this shuttle hawk, you hear that weight in there? So if I got that hooked on my cable right there, and I got my line back here, and I lift up the back end of that, the current, when you're going forward, will force that down. And then once a fish hits that, you'll hear that weight right there shift, and then this comes back up. The current pushes this back up to the top of to the top of the water. So a great way to stack. If you only have 1 downrigger, you can run 2 lines. And then the other, and if you're using these, you probably want a line counter reel, so you know how far you're going down with your line. So make sure you have a line counter reel, or if you're fishing high in the water column, you can probably tell if you're 5, 10, 15 feet down there, as long as the water's clear. And then these are some other clips that you can hook on a line release clip to. And if you're gonna fish 30 feet deep, you would drop that downrigger ball down to 15 feet, and then you would hook your other line onto this one, and now you're fishing 30 and 15. Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, just another option if you don't have 4 downriggers.
But I've run into using those shuttle hawks sometimes with the slower speed. and not being able to get down below 25 feet is about as far as you can get them to go sometimes.
Yeah.
Is there another trick that can be done with those getting to deeper?
No, there's not. The question was, and we probably ought to read these questions back, but at slower speeds, these do not go down really great. So, 1.2 to 1.4, they're going to go down really slow, but the faster you go, the easier these are going to go down, and the further they're going to go down. So yeah, you're right. At slower speeds, they're a little more difficult to get down into the water column.
Your line as it goes down.
What's that?
You want to keep your tension off the line. as it goes
Yes.
down.
Yes, keep your tension on the line when you're letting these down, because most people hold it there and they're letting line out, and this thing is not moving, and the next thing you know, they have 50 feet of line out. You've been there, huh? Yeah, I've done the same thing. Okay, next slide. All right, and then temperature gauge. I know a lot of you guys were talking about water temperatures. This is a fish hawk temperature gauge. I had one of these. It's sitting in the bottom of Soldier Creek right now. They're $150. Like, I'm not buying another one. I was heartbroken when I lost that, but typically your kokanee like to hang in 47, 45 to 55 degree water. This is a great tool that you can hook onto your downrigger. Just make sure it doesn't hit your transom when you bring it up and knock it off. And it measures the water temperature every 5 feet. So early in the season, those kokanee may be down deep. They may be hanging in that water column, that temperature that they prefer. So just another great little tool that you can find those water temps.
First time I used one of those last year on Flaming Gorge, right after ice was off, it was the same temperature from the surface to the bottom in 70 foot of water.
Yeah, that
It
happens.
was rather interesting. I figured there'd be some change, but there was no change. Every 5 feet was the same temperature all the way to the bottom.
I hoped.
5 foot of water.
I was hoping to get to use mine on Flaming Gorge, but I didn't make it there before I lost it. So, but you're probably right. Like, those temperatures sometimes can be the same from top to bottom.
There was still ice floating on the lake at the time.
Okay. Good to know.
Certain in certain areas.
Okay. And then maintenance and safety. Everybody understand what the Terminator kits are? Does everybody have those on your boat? Okay. These Terminator kits are really cheap. They come with instructions in here. If you're over 35, you need readers. Like, you're gonna need it to read the instructions in here until you figure out how to do it. But they're fairly simple. Make sure you always have some Terminator kits in your boat. Leather gloves. Make sure you have leather gloves so when you're grabbing that cable, it doesn't cut your hands. And then electrical tape. Put that around your cable before you cut it so it doesn't fray. And then you can take that tape off and run it through these little Terminator holes a lot easier. Always make sure you have an extra weight, extra line releases, and fuses for your electric downriggers. How many of you forget about that one? I have. And then the Canon downriggers come with locks. Like, you can buy locks. They do not come with locks. You can buy locks. So if you're staying out on the water or you're staying at a slip, you can put those locks on there to lock those up. I mean, somebody can still steal them, but at least it keeps the honest people away. And then sunglasses. How many of you guys fish and don't use sunglasses, safety glasses? Now, how many of you have been bringing in a kokanee and that hook comes back and about hits you in the head?
Or the finger.
The finger. Yeah. I've got a nephew that had one come, and I can show you a picture. He got it in his nose, and it went. You've seen it. Yeah, he had a hook come back and get him in the nose, and I've had dodgers come back and hit me in the forehead. And make sure you're wearing safety glasses out there in the morning or even in the afternoon, evening when you're kokanee fishing, because those fish have soft mouths, and when that line comes out, it comes getting at you. It's gonna come quick. So that's pretty much everything on downriggers. And then if you're on a budget, how many of you use lead core line? Okay, that's a great option to use. Sometimes you don't know exactly where you're at unless you've been fishing it a lot and you're paying attention to your fish finder, and you got to spend some time on the water to understand what that lead core is doing down there. I don't use lead core. I haven't used it a whole lot. Maybe when I was 5 to 10 years old with my grandpa on Strawberry, we used lead core, but I just vividly remember lots of colors on the reel. And then snap weights. Anybody here use snap weights? Snap weights are an excellent tool. I have an assortment of 1/2 to 1 to 3 to 4 ounce snap weights. And I use a 50-50 rule on these. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I use a 50-50 rule on these, so if I let 50 feet out, I hook on a 2 or 3 ounce, and then I let out another 50 feet. So, you know, on this little chart, I've got a couple of these charts if you need them, or you can take a picture of it and leave it on your phone. That's what I would recommend, because you're going to lose the paper. You're not going to lose your phone. Has anybody ever lost their phone in the reservoir? Your son did? So,
That was bad.
don't take the picture with your son's phone then.
No.
All right? So snap weights are really great to use if you don't have downriggers. And I've started using these a lot. I'm sure a lot of you have been using them. They're really cheap, inexpensive, and they work great. And then the other thing that was on the last slide, you don't need to go back, but if you have to, and I've done this, parachute cord and a weight, drop it down the side of your boat, and tie it off to your boat. I've had a downrigger go down before, and I was going to make sure I was fishing with what appeared to be a second downrigger, but literally just a rope with a ball on it, drop it down and bring it back up. But that's just a cheap, inexpensive way to do if you can't afford downriggers or snap weights or some other things that we've discussed. And then this is just kind of a picture of my boat. With the 4 downriggers, I've got the 4 Optimums on the back. You can see I'm fishing multiple poles there. Of course, we're covering different depths. We'll discuss that. And then the next one, that's just a little more close-up of how I have those set up. And then you can go to the next slide. And then now we're going to talk about why I feel like these things are important to have on your boat. I'm not saying you have to have them. For me, they help me be more successful as I'm out fishing with folks. So Humminbird is what I use on my boat. Roger, on the Thunderjet boat, we use a Lowrance and Scotties. But for me, I just wanted to talk about the Humminbird all-in-one network today. So more or less, you can take this Humminbird fish finder and hook it up to your electric motor. This is all Bluetooth. And hook it up to your downrigger, and all of these things talk together. So depending on what that transducer is reading on your fish finder, it links in with your downrigger to let you know what depth you are, so that you can literally see your downrigger balls on the fish finder. So it's kind of cool. Like I can go into a mode on my fish finder, and I can see where all 4 of my downrigger balls are, especially when I'm crossing through fish. If I've got fish down there, I can go to that mode and I can make sure I'm in that zone. So that's extremely helpful to me. And then your electric motor, same thing. Like you can use Mark covered a little bit of this on here, but autopilot is something that you really need to have to make sure you're going on that path that you want to head. And then cruise control. It has cruise control, so you can set it up to go the speed that you want to. Now you don't always want to go in one path. So, you can also set up waypoints on this fish finder to make it do S-turns if you're too lazy to hit your button every once in a while, or you forget, because these are all basics that you have to do to catch kokanee. There's a lot of basics that you have to do to catch kokanee. And then the other thing I wanted to discuss today was the network. So not only do we have an all-in-one network right there, now we can use an Ethernet switch. And we can also hook our cell phone. So your cell phone, you can also hook it up to your downriggers, and you can run your downriggers, the Optimums, off your cell phone. But this Ethernet switch, if you want to add another head unit to the back of your boat, I have that one up on the front of my boat, and now I've added one onto the back, because I'm usually looking out the back of my boat. And it's hard for me to pay attention to the fish finder that's clear in the front of the boat, like these ones, when I can have one in the back and pay attention to everything that's going on. So I've added the network switch. I've got everything that's coming off that transducer pinging into this head unit, And then this year, I've added Mega Live. Does anybody have Mega Live on their boats? Who has a Garmin? What's the Garmin model?
Live scope.
Live Scope? Anybody have Live Scope? Is anybody using these tools for kokanee fishing? Are you using it for trolling?
I use it for everything.
You,
Yeah, I use it for everything. It's like a TV. You see what's going on there.
it's like a video game that frustrates the heck out of you.
It's a lot smarter than I'll ever be.
Yeah. So I put this unit on my boat. I know I'm a little late in the game on the Mega Live, but I put this unit on my boat last fall. It's incredible. Like, I can see real-time fish, and I was fishing, like Mark was said, I was fishing 40 to 50 feet deep. I had my setbacks at 10 to 15 feet deep, and I can literally see the downrigger ball. I can see the cable. I can see my dodger, and I can see the hooks swinging. That's how incredible it is. And then I could see the fish come up and look at what I was presenting and then swim away. And not just one, there's hundreds of them. So it's frustrating. It's a frustrating tool. Even my clients are like, why won't these fish hit? I said, I know, we're learning though. We're trying to figure this out. Why are they not hitting? I did learn something this year with it. I know when there's a cutthroat down there, and I know when there's kokanee. Cutthroats come in, like you look at it, kind of slowly swim away. When the kokanees are in there, there's 2 to 3 usually at a time. Sometimes there's one, but it's a more active motion down there in the water. And get ready. Like when the kokanee come in and they're close to that, and especially when there's 2 or 3, like hang on, they're gonna hit. But like I said, it can be frustrating. I've watched hundreds of kokanee or cutthroats swim by my line and not hit it, which tells me I have something on that they don't like. So it's something that we can learn from. We can use that as a tool to change colors, change our speeds, maybe change our depths up and down, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So does anybody have any questions about this stuff? And if we do, I gave Taylor the mic, so I'm going to have Taylor turn on that mic and bring the mic to you so we can hear you. So
How do you mount the
So-
transducer for that? Do that.
How do you mount your transducer for your Mega Live to shoot now?
Thank you. I forgot that. I have what's called a Brew City. It's a Brew City stick, and I mount that. Go back to the boat pictures. One more. I actually have my Brew City stick. It's on that side, but I have it mounted to this rail, and then I can slide it up and down. I can rotate it horizontal to get it out of the way if I need to pick up, and then I can turn it right there. Now, you can mount that Mega Live or the Garmin model on an Ultrex. I think Ultrex only. Anybody gonna call me out on that? Okay, I think it's just the Ultrex electric motor that you can put the Mega Live on. You can't put it on the Ulterra, you can't put it on the Tarova. I'm sure it's gonna happen. But the Brew City rod, if you're fishing in the back of your boat and you wanna watch those fish, you can turn that stick right there with that Mega Live on there and see what's going on the side of your boat, front of the boat, below your boat.
What kind of range does it have away from the boat?
That's where I'm still trying to dial it in. If we're deep and I'm fishing 20 feet or closer, excellent. As it gets into 30, 40 feet as I'm trolling, it starts fading out. I can still see fish, but I can't see my dodger, and I'm still trying to dial that all in. Get that, figure that out a little better. Like I said, electronics aren't my thing. I'm still working with them, figuring them out.
How much does that hummingbird thing cost?
But
How much does that thing cost to put on your boat?
that Mega Live,
Yeah.
I think I spent about $1,000 on it, and then the head unit was $600 or $700. So you're, for that, just that right there, you're $1,700 to $2,000. Yeah, it's expensive. It's not cheap, but for me, I'm the kind of fisherman, like when you come out fishing with me, I have really good stuff on my boat. We're not doing it halfway. We want you to come out and we'll let you run this stuff. Like we'll let you see how it works. We'll let you see, what it does out there. So you can see if you really want to buy that stuff. Even if you're out there at Strawberry and you want to come talk to me on the slip, come over and I'll show you what I have. I'm always game to do that. But yeah, this stuff isn't cheap. Those head units are, $800 to $1,000. That electric Altera that I have on my boat, that's an auto deploy, auto stow. You can get the Tarova, that's a little less, but those run up to $3,000. And Optimums, $1,000 to $1,500, depending on if you find them on sale. And then buy them in January, February when they have their rebates. So be smart about it. Buy it during this when you don't need it, which is sometimes hard to do. But yeah, I mean, you start hooking that all up, you might have a $10,000 system on your boat. It's expensive, but there are things that I use that I feel help make me more successful on the water. You can still go out and do it. It's just my opinion. I feel like I'm more consistent with this stuff on the boat. Well,
I got a question right here.
oh, there you go.
So with that scope, is there a certain depth that'll work up to, or will it work all the way to the bottom of any lake? Or
So
how does it work?
I've just had it on Strawberry and Jordanelle, and I've been able to pick up fish up to 90 feet so far.
Really?
And then back 60 to 70 feet. Now I know the Garmin one they say is better. Have you used yours yet, Mark? But he will one day. And it may work better. I've heard the Garmin one is better. But that I don't need to use that one. I mean, I could, if I'm using that system right there, I could use Garmin or Humminbird. I don't need to network it to everything. I just did because I already had Humminbird.
You can network your stuff to all your other stuff.
Yes, as long as it's Humminbird
Right.
or Canon or Minn Kota, you can network all that together. Was there a question right here, Taylor?
I just bought an Altera. It's just been out a couple times, and I've been using that autopilot. And you're talking about doing eskers. If you get yourself in a direction and you say you use your remote and you turn it so it goes to the left a couple times, does it go back to that original setting you had, or does it now go off in that direction?
No, it doesn't. So if you've got it heading in a direction and you turn that to go left or right, it's going to stick that way. So I typically go left a couple clicks, make that hard turn, go for 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, and then I hard turn it back this way. And I do that a lot. I'm surprised my buttons aren't worn out on my remote. I do it a lot more than I probably should, but it's just out of habit. It's like muscle memory. I'm always messing with that. But that S-turns maneuvering, it's something you want to be doing out on the water. So we'll get into some, let's go to the next slide. Okay, and then just to finish out on the Canon Optimums, the cool thing about the Optimums is it has preset depth. So if you're old like me, not that I'm old, but I feel like I am, I can't, when I'm fishing 4 downriggers, I can never remember what depth I set each downrigger. Any of you guys have that problem? You set a downrigger down and you're like, I just caught a fish on that, but what depth was I? I forget. So what's cool about this Optimum is, see that little target button right there? I had a laser. There's a little target button right there. If you hit that button twice, it takes you down to the exact depth you were when you pulled that fish off that clip, or that fish pulled itself off the clip. So awesome to have those preset depths, or those memory depths, as I call them, when you pull a fish in. And then the other option that has on here is cycle mode. Cycle mode is a mode where you can set it up to go 5 to however far you want, up and down, at 5 to 60 second intervals. So I usually run mine 5 to 10 feet for 60 seconds. So my downrigger will cycle up 5 feet or 10 feet every 60 seconds and then come back down. And I've found later in the season that is a tool that puts fish in your boat. And I mean, we're talking, there's some days, that's the only way I've caught kokanee. And everything else out in the water did not catch a fish, but every time that downrigger cycled 5 feet or 10 feet, a fish hit it as soon as it cycled up. Rarely it's down, but it's usually up. So that just tells me those fish are following that presentation, and then as that comes up, it activates them to hit it. And that could be a speed thing too. Maybe as that goes up a little bit faster, it triggers them. But the cycle mode is a great tool to have.
How do you adjust your line if your ball's coming up and down, your pole's not going to be?
Okay, so he asked how you adjust your line if the ball's coming up and down. So the first cycle's always up. So if you've got your line tightened down and it cycles up, your line's loose. I just leave it. And then as it cycles back down, it tightens up so it doesn't pull it out of the clip. Does that make sense? So yeah, I mean, you always want to tighten it down and then start that cycle so when it comes up, your line's loose. And then it'll tighten up as you go back into the down cycle. And so hopefully that makes sense.
That doesn't affect setting the hook or anything, or does that set the hook?
Not usually. I mean, yeah, if it's up and that fish hits it, sometimes you'll see that, you know, that little bit of a bounce and it'll pull it out, and you're gonna need to get to that pull real quick. Like, don't be slow, get to it quick and get that line tight.
What if you're old?
What if you're old? Well, I'll tell you what. I have a problem getting to those pulls sometimes. Like, I just had my hip replaced just recently, and all the last 2 years, I have to stay at the back of the boat because I can't get there. Like, it's hard. I understand. Like, sometimes it's hard to get to those pulls quick, and yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm only 49, and I feel like I'm 70. I really do. My body's taking a toll. So I understand. We take people out fishing all the time, and it's tough for them. They want to do that. They want to get back there and rip that pull out of that downrigger, and they want to fish like they always have. And we try to make that happen for them. Maybe we set them a little closer to the pull or whatever. But yeah, I get it. It's tough. And then the other thing is bottom tracking. A lot of you fish the gorge. So bottom tracking, that's another great tool. You can set that to stay 5 to 10 feet off the bottom. And same problem with the line. You're going to have to watch that pull. You may need to put it in the clicker mode. So if that ball starts dropping, that line starts dropping with it. It doesn't pull it out of the clip. But that bottom tracking's, it's awesome. We used it at the gorge last year as that ball's dropping down, and then the bottom of the reservoir starts coming up. That downrigger starts bringing it up. And now the cannons have a sensitivity mode of 1 to 5, so you can make it come up really quick or really slow, depending on what kind of terrain you're fishing. But bottom tracking, especially for lake trout, that's a great tool. And then multiple views. A lot of these downriggers, these Optimums now, have different views here where you can see what depth you're at. You can see the fish finder on there. There's just a lot of cool stuff that you can go through on that.
How quick a response are they to a shelf? If you're below the shelf and all of a sudden you get a shelf come up.
Yeah, so when you're fishing a shelf, that can be a problem because your transducer's right there.
Right, and you're right on one.
Yeah, so that's where you're going to probably need to know what kind of terrain you're fishing, because if there's a lot of shelves there, you may get yourself in trouble real quick. So yeah, know what you're fishing. That can definitely be a problem. I know the gorge, we played with it out there and we ran into some shelves. Luckily we didn't catch.
South Buckboard side that you're going from 60 foot of water all of a sudden to 12 foot, just a
Yeah.
real short distance.
Yep.
But it's a long way off the shore.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then Mark went over a lot of this, so I'm not going to cover it too deeply, but if as I go through each one of those bullets, if you have a question, raise your hand. So crowds, you know, I always talk about crowds, and I always tell people, like, when you come off a Strawberry off the boat ramp, don't head to the crowds. Like, stay away from them. The fish early in the morning are usually schooled up, and when all those boats start heading to the same place, what do? They scatter. So find areas where the boats aren't and hit those, especially on the outside of them, because if there's 50, 20 boats all in one area, more than likely those fish have scattered. And now they're kind of out on the outside. Now, here's a little tip. After those, if they're catching fish there and they leave, give it about 45 minutes and go back. Those fish are they're gonna be there. And then, anybody got questions on crowds?
I'm wondering, when you're looking at your fish finder, where is that in relation to the bow of your boat, your transom view? Or I mean, your transom view, not the bow. But where are you looking at the view on your fish finder in relation to where the boat is at the time?
At the time. So the transducer's on the back of the boat. So when you go over that fish, that's when you see it. It's more or less right at the back of your boat.
So that's right when it first appears, is when it's right when it's
as far as I understand, yes, it may pick it up a little bit earlier, but not much. So yeah, it's relatively close to the back of your boat. And then and I'm telling you guys this, like, if you're not covering all these items when you're out fishing, you're missing some important stuff. Like, you need to make sure you're doing all this stuff out there, and it's hard because we're all out there to enjoy the day. But if you put some effort into doing all these things, you're going to be more successful out there kokanee fishing. Good luck staying focused and doing it. Multiple lines to cover depths. Like Mark said, I fish 6 rods at a time. I have a rod down at 40, I have one at 35, I have one at 25, I have one at 20. I have outriggers that are at 15 and 10 feet. I may be using snap weights. I might even fish 8 that day if I have 3 or 4 people on the boat. I may even run 2 rods out the back and long line them. How many of you in here have never ever long lined? Long line. Run a rod at 130 feet width. At least that size of dodger. Don't do it with a quick dodger. Do it with a super dodger, either the 4.5 or the 4.5? Or the 6.2. My memory is horrible. But do it with a little bit of heavier dodger when you're long lining, just so it stays 3 to 5 feet under the surface.
You say skateboard or just the 3 and 4?
Yeah, this you call this a Dakota Dodger, a skateboard Dodger, or a Super Dodger.
So not the teardrop shape, but you run that.
Yes, this size. If you long line this, you're probably going to need a snap weight because this is going to float. This one likes to flutter up a little bit. It's a little light. So make sure you're running those. Battery die? Make sure you're running those a little bit deep. And the same thing with these Dodgers, like you're going to maybe need to put a snap weight on them, or make sure you're putting these on your downriggers and running them because these will float too. They're a little lighter.
How far do you put your snap weights in front of your Dodger when closest to it? How far?
So I do a 50-50 rule. I let 50 feet out, and then I hook on the snap weight, and then I run another 50 feet.
What's your, when you're long lining, what's your leader length? Does that change for long lining versus your downrigger?
No, I run all my leader lengths. I'll talk about that in presentations. I always run them all relatively the same. I'm anywhere from 6 to 14 inches long on my leader lengths. Just depends on the time of year.
When you double shocking, do you put on the bottom line, are you putting it out farther than the top one, or you putting the top one farther out?
Now say that again.
When you double shocking on your downrigger, like 10 feet apart.
Okay.
15,
Yeah, so when I'm stacking,
you want the line longer on the bottom or the top?
so when you're stacking on a downrigger, yeah, that's a great question. My deeper ones, I run closer to the boat. The higher ones, I run further back. So that makes sense, because if the fish are closer to the surface and your boat comes over, it's going to scatter them a little bit. So you're going to want those setbacks on those closer to the surface. You're going to want those a little bit further back, quite a bit further back.
Who you talk to, you get the opposite answer.
What's that?
Depending on who you talk to, they'll give you the opposite answer.
Yeah, they will. Yeah.
I've heard both.
Yeah, like I said, we all fish different. We all fish a different way. All of our ways work. This is just how I do it. So, like I said, multiple lines to cover depths. Make sure you're fishing as many poles as you possibly can out there at different depths so you don't tangle. Like, make sure you're staying 5 to 10 feet away from each one of those lines. Don't run 10 over here and 10 over here and try to do turns, because you're going to tangle. So do a 10 and a 20 and a 5 and a 30, whatever it is, but make sure you're stacking those lines so that you're not having any issues. And setbacks, we just kind of discussed that. The deeper you go, the closer I come to the boat. The higher I am, the further out I go. Does that make sense? That's how I do it. And then presentations. A lot of people ask what works on Strawberry as far as colors and presentations. You know, everything works, guys. It's just you got to make sure your leader lengths are right. You got to make sure that you have the right color on for the day, and you got to make sure that you're going the right speeds and making those turns. There's all these, the right bait on, the right scents. There's a lot of things that you need to make sure that you're doing. But presentations for me, I typically on strawberry, I'm pinks. And last year was green. Like I was running green 90% of the year at strawberry last year. That's usually a 2-week time frame for green. It was green like all year. It didn't matter what month it was or what day it was. Green was just money. So for me, if I have a bad day on strawberry and I'm going through different colors, that can get frustrating. Don't let that get in your head. Like if you have a bad day on strawberry and you've went through every color in your arsenal, I mean, you've ripped out this tackle buddy and every line's sitting in your boat and it's not working. Tomorrow's a new day. That day sucked. It sucked. Like go back to what you know that works. Have confidence in what you're using, because I'll tell you, you can get really frustrated and never want to go back to strawberry or the gorge again because you had 1 or 2 days that were horrible because nothing was working. It just sucked for a couple days, guys. It happens. We've had days out at strawberry where we've caught 1 or 2 kokanee, and it's hard. Like when you got clients on the boat and they want to catch kokanee and you're only putting 1 or 2 kokanee in the boat, it's frustrating. And the day before you did 30, and then the day after you did 15 to 20. It's extremely frustrating that one day threw you off. But always go back to with what you're comfortable fishing. And then same thing on your presentations. I like to, on my presentations, and I see this all the time, you guys, some people come up to me and be like, yeah, we was using a spaz today, a Super Dodger on. And Mark puts, what, 30 inches a leader on here? 24? They've got the whole 24 inches on there. And I'm like, you can't do that. You gotta shorten up that leader length. So make sure you're running your leader lengths. I run everything from literally from 6 to probably 14 inches long on my leader lengths. I've even ran 4 inches late in the season. I've had it to where my squid or my spaz or whatever I'm using is literally almost touching that Dodger. I'm whipping the heck out of it. So depending on what you're using, mess with your leader lengths, find something that's working and stick with that. And you can change every once in a while, but I tend to stay with those lengths. That's the lengths I like. And then changing presentations and colors. Like I said before, I don't change colors a whole lot. If I do have a bad day, I always go back to the boat. I take everything off and I put everything back on that I started with for the day, because I know, that's the next day is gonna be different. Now, if I am using green and I catch a kokanee and I drop it back down and I catch another fish on green, the second or third time, I'm probably gonna start putting 2 or 3 greens on. So that's the only time I start changing a lot, is when I notice this color is working a lot better than pinks or oranges or whatever color that I've been playing around with. So make sure you're paying attention to that. If you got a color that's working a little bit better, start putting it on multiple lines after the second or third fish. Don't do it just because you caught 1, but 2 or 3, that's probably a pretty good indicator that those fish are going after that color. And then speed variation. This is so important. If you're not changing your speeds, that can make your day horrible. I was out last year on strawberry and I was fishing right next to Roger. We was in an area where we'd been doing really well. I had 4 kokanee in the boat and Roger had 12. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? The wind picks up. I'd been fishing 1.4 to 1.5 for 3 weekends in a row. The wind picks up, pushes me to 1.8, 1.9. We tripled, like that fast. I called Roger and I'm like, what speed are you going? And he's like, I've been doing 1.8, 1.9 all day. And I'm like, son of a gun. Like had I been doing 1.8, just that little bit extra speed that day, we probably would have had a lot better day. So those speeds are important. Make sure you're varying those speeds. Any information or any questions on speeds? Okay, and then S-turns, we talked about that. Make sure you're not doing a straight line. Make sure you're doing a lot of S-turns. Watch out for other boats out there. Planer boards, not a fan of them, especially on Strawberry. There's way too many boats out there for planer boards. But some days it's not as busy, so it's not a problem. But it's hard to get around people's planer boards out there. So just pay attention when you're doing your turns that you don't take somebody out. Because if we take somebody's planer board out or we about hit your boat, it's always our fault. Like, it's never your fault. I'm taking the blame for it. We should have been paying attention. So just make sure you're careful out there when you're running planer boards and you're making those maneuvers, because there are a lot of people around you. And then last but not least, if you have fish finders, when you catch a kokanee, start making history. Mark waypoints. If you bring it into the boat, mark a waypoint. If you see it jumping out behind your boat and you know you had a kokanee on and you lose it, mark a waypoint. My fish finder looks like, I mean, it's all waypoints. But when you're having a tough day, those waypoints can change your day around. You can start going from waypoint to waypoint, and sometimes you'll pick up a kokanee on each one of those waypoints. But make sure that you're creating history on your fish finder. That way you can come back to those areas and catch fish, especially when you're having a rough day. And then why am I still not catching kokanee? I can't tell you. It's hard. There's some days that it's rough out there. It's a brutal day, but every day is like that. Some days it can be really good, and the next day it can just be really horrible. But make sure that you're doing these things. Make sure you're covering the basics, because the basics are going to, that's what's going to put fish on your boat. And like I said, marking those locations where you catch fish, that's really critical information. It's very valuable, especially as we start early into the season, to the middle of the season, to the late part of the season. You can kind of see where those fish are going. I kind of understand where the fish travel in Strawberry and where they go and where they stop and then they turn around and go back. But this year, it was totally different. I was talking to somebody earlier, like last year, early in the morning, we were fishing. Usually early in the morning in July and August, you can catch kokanee right early in the morning on the surface. We were fishing 4 downriggers. We were catching our early morning fish at 40 feet. And then, as we got a little later in the morning, we started catching more fish at 20 feet, 15. At 11 o'clock, right when we get done with our trips, we're catching them on the surface. I can guarantee you the majority of you would think the opposite of that, right? They go deeper. Last year they didn't. And so we figured that out really early, what was going on, because we were fishing multiple lines. We picked on what was going on in the water there, and we started fishing that clear to the end of August. And that's what they were doing the whole entire half month of July and the whole month of August. They were deep in the mornings and coming up to the surface. I don't know why. It's the first time my years of fishing Strawberry, it's the first time I've ever seen them doing that. It's usually they're going deeper as we get warmer water and later into the year. And then I think we just got, next slide. These are just some pictures that we took out. We took out shills last year. This was an incredible day. Like when the ice comes off at Strawberry, it can be some really good fishing. We had 2 days that we took shills out there. I know it was me and Mark and Taylor came with us, and we had Roger out there, and we picked off a lot of kokanee in 2 days. I want to say in 3 hours we were catching anywhere from 40 to 50 kokanee in 3 hours on each boat. So there's days like that happen, but there's not many. So if you can get out there early in the year when the ice comes off, get out there in the middle of June when it gets prime time, you may get lucky and get one of these days. After that day, it was 2 days like that. After that, it went to 5 to 10, 15 fish. It slowed down pretty quick. So.
How deep would your long line be out if you had one snap weight on and out 100 feet?
So yeah, how deep would your long line be out? Depends on the weight that you put on it. But if you put a 1 ounce on there and do 50-50 and you go 100 feet, you're probably going to be 5 to 8 feet. And then if you do a 2 ounce, you're probably going to add 5 feet to each one of those. This chart that's up here, and you're welcome to come get one, it kind of explains what you're talking about. And then next picture, that's just another picture. And then Does anybody else, go ahead and go to the next one. Does anybody have any questions that we've discussed?
I was just gonna ask, you said you're guiding on East Canyon. Are they pulling any kokanee out yet?
So East Canyon, I believe, had kokanee in it for 3 years. I think it's the third year. I've heard of 2 or 3 caught on East Canyon, not a lot. When we was out there, I know me and Mark and who was out there with us that day? Alex. Yeah, we went to East Canyon last December. I think it was December, and there was a guy that was fishing over on the west side, and I think he pulled out a 22 or 23 inch, 3.5 pound kokanee that day, and that's the first kokanee he'd caught, and he fishes kokanee there. So East Canyon hasn't been super productive. Neither's Rockport, but I haven't fished Rockport a lot yet. But I'll spend some more time on them and hopefully figure them out. Jordanelle, I'm starting to figure out a little better, but by the time I start figuring it out, I move to Strawberry. And then I try to come back there later in the fall once in a while too, just to see if we can figure them out a little later in the fall.
How'd you do in the fall at Jordanelle?
Jordanelle in the fall?
Yeah, how'd you do?
Not great. Like, I don't know if those fish were, if there just wasn't a lot of fish this year or if they were already up the stream, but we picked up a lot of rainbows, a lot of smaller rainbows. Yeah, last year, not this year, but last year, because I was able to fish this winter, I was not able to fish that much. But on Jordanelle, when we was fishing Jordanelle in December, and then February and March, or I think it was March when the ice came off last year, it was awesome. So I thought Jordanelle would be really good there in the fall, but it just wasn't.
How do you avoid the Bear Lake cutthroats? Someone talked about it in the earlier presentation. I wasn't listening correctly. Could you talk about that again?
How to avoid the cutthroats?
Yes. So
it's hard. What did you say? I want that on the mic. What did you say? It's hard. But I'll tell you what, if you're in cutthroat, the kokanee are right there. They're nearby. They really are, guys. Like, if you're catching a lot of cutthroats, there's kokanee right there in that area. Those cutthroats are there for a reason. They're munching on kokanee. So don't let that frustrate you. But if you adjust your depth, maybe a little bit 5 feet up or down, you may be able to stay out of those cutthroats a little bit. Try it. I don't know. They're annoying. They really are. But they're great. Like, we take clients out and they just love to catch fish. They could care less if we catch a kokanee. So some people like them, some people don't. I don't care for them, but I'm learning to like them because my clients like them. So if they like them and that's what they want to catch for the day, hey, makes my day easy, because it's a lot of pressure to put kokanee in the boat. It's hard. Okay, I don't see any other questions, and then yeah, you can just go to the next slide. So that's all I have, but I do want to, oh yeah. So all of you, real quick, I'm going to give away 2 hats. Look under your chair, or if there's not a sticker under your chair, then look on the chair next to you. There's 2 stickers out there that are under your seat. It's a good exercise. We get one? There's one. And here's the okay, we got them.
Way to go, Kaz.
And then, just real quick, a lot of people always ask, I just want to mention this real quick, things to carry your Dodgers. I found this Kufa bag a few years ago. This is just a breathable mesh Dodger holder. And if you have carpet up in your boat, you can Velcro it to there. But here's a great tool to hold your Dodgers. You're welcome to come look at it. It's called a Kufa. K-U-F-A. They're pretty inexpensive. They used to be like $8 a piece. Now I think they're 15 or something. They've doubled. And then everybody probably has a tackle buddy to wrap your lures around. You can tie those onto if you're done using them. And then another thing that we've been doing this year, when we're tying up some of our own tackle or we're fixing tackle that breaks, is we take the plastic Plano boxes and we're just wrapping them in there and setting them in there. That's a great way to hold your new squids in there. That way you can get to them pretty quick. So just a couple ideas out there, that things that we use that, sorry about that, that work really well. So other than that, that's all I have. Marine Products, do you have anything you want to come up and give away stuff? All right, here we go. Thanks guys for coming out.